Honey, we're home.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Honey, We're Home. I'm Caroline Crawford Patterson. This is our first solo episode, and I feel like we have a lot to catch up on. And it's my first solo episode ever, so I was nervous, and then I was walking here, and I got excited for some reason. So I'm just gonna lean into that, even though I'm definitely still in limbo. I've done many a podcast in my day, never solo, but I think this is going to be so fun. I have spent so much time thinking about how to best continue the vibe of the show and also help it evolve. I know earlier this year I did whole breakdown from you guys on what you wanted to see more of, and since this is a natural transition, it's going to be a really fun time to put all of that into play and see what we can come up with. I also have gotten a lot of good advice from you guys and my friends too about just sort of how to transition something into solo. And this is going to sound so crazy. I am not the largest podcast listener. I don't know how to explain the fact that I love podcasting and that I don't listen to them enough. But I realize that a lot of solo episodes come in sort of 30-minute bite-sized pieces, and then we can do a mix of guest episodes. And so I've spent a lot of time brainstorming about how exactly that would look, and I have some ideas, but we're just gonna have to figure it out as we go together. I'm gonna try to do 30 minutes today. Obviously at this point you can see how long the episode is, so if it's 45, feel free to laugh at me now, and if it's 20, feel free to laugh at me, and if it's 30, think, wow, she actually did that. I am thinking structurally. I just wanna put it out there so that we're all on the same page. I think I'm going to do 2 solo episodes a month and 2 guest episodes a month. None of this is set in stone. So please, if you disagree, let me know. We can do more guest episodes. We can do more solo episodes. My concern with the solo episodes is not having the banter, I think, can lead to a one-way opinion on some stuff that we talk about on here. I feel like this is a show that's so heavily focused on listener involvement that it's almost dangerous to just have one person commenting on it all the time. For the sake of this episode, there's a lot of personal stuff that we have to catch up on, what's really been going on in my life. So I think that will be totally fine. I'm also realizing that this is where I really need to start focusing on stopping saying the word as well. But that's the structure that I'm thinking. If you have other ideas that you feel are better, let me know. I think that sometimes we'll do 3 guests and 1 solo or whatnot. Someone suggested having John on more often. I do think that that'll be fun. As we know, John's work schedule is literally not to be reckoned with. Oh my God. So I'm here to tell you that if I had my way, John would be on once a month, and that probably won't happen. But any time that John has a day off, he will come on. And I'm already thinking that the day that we leave to go to Sarah's graduation in Paris, which is another conversation, we take that 11:30 p.m. flight from which, if you live in New York, please be flying French Bee to France. But we take that 11:30 p.m. flight out of Newark, which is nice because we don't have to go to JFK. And so he told me that he was going to take that day off. Now that I'm thinking about it, though, why? That actually makes 0 sense. I'm going to have to follow up with him on that. But if he takes that day off, then maybe he'll come on the show. But now I'm why the fuck would he take that day off? He has to start his 2 weeks. Whatever. My brain is so fried. He was telling me this and I was okay, so structure-wise, I like that. I also was thinking, and this is a question for the group, is whether to schedule guests around specific topics so that we have 2 parties discussing topics and questions and write-ins, or to do them more entertainment. I have a list of guests right now that are specialty guests. For example, not a marriage counselor, but a couples intimacy type of therapist, where she's in charge, she wrote a book, but she's in charge of these couples retreats that help couples reignite the romance and that type of stuff. The astrologist, aesthetics people. I have that type of narrative with a guest, but also just the entertainment, with friends. Jenna and I are going to do a whole, you guys asked me about this actually yesterday, but We're going to do a whole behind the scenes of everything but the dress. Like what went into building it, how much it cost, why it took so long, what it was like, what we've learned, just the whole behind the scenes of everything of like building that business, the two of us. So we're going to do that episode. We have an episode coming up with Kate Lewis, who is like the queen of turning your apartment into a home or your house into a home and like DIYing everything and, you know, the mix between renter friendly and not, but it improves like the unit, hosting. So personality and expert, I feel like, are mixing, and I would be really keen to know which one you're like leaning towards more or who you would want topics saved for. Like, I don't want to go into a topic and then realize that it might have been better saved for somebody else. Like, I also can be transparent with you guys about who's coming up, because that is the other thing, and we can sort of like episode plan together, is that, and we have to get into this, but we have to talk about I'm not trying to be a broken record, but we have to talk about what's been going on in my life. And my mom has been diagnosed with ALS, which is so difficult. It's bulbar onset ALS, which means that it starts from the inside. So she's already lost her speech. And she got her feeding tube this past weekend. And she can still like walk and stuff and move, and she can eat. It's a little more technical than that. And so I am thinking that it would be good to stack episode recording, spend an entire day recording for the month, which allows a little bit more freedom and pre-planning for all of us to be like, these are the people that we know are coming on. Are there specific topics you want for these people to save for these people? Or, you know, would you rather that be a solo topic? And I think that structure will help us like get the most out of all of the guests that we bring on, like as a unit. And I'm also hoping that it'll lead to like some fun aesthetic changes that just take like a little bit more time to set up in the studio, like backdrops and mic flags and, you know, fun stuff. So I'm kind of like leaning towards like a little makeover when that, you know, starts going off too, which I feel like you can expect that in like 3 to 4 episodes. Like you'll probably see that shift just because there's a lot going on right now and everything takes time. So those were like additional questions that I had for you. And also to know if you're more into like theming months out, I feel like I've gotten mixed feedback on if the series is better. Like, here's a problem, here's initial discussion. Okay, now here's listener feedback. Then here's expert advice. We could do a series-based thing. Like we could go more into that Mel Robbins style, or like, you know, a 4-part series of something, or we could keep it sporadic and interesting. I myself am very ADD, so I don't even know if I can stay on topic that long, but we could certainly try. And then I'm sorry that I'm like rambling. I just have so much to get through. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask is about the name. I'm just like, is it supposed to be Honey, I'm Home? Like that is I have asked so many people this. I'm like, first of all, I did not even like think of changing the name like at all. And then someone said, so what are you going to do with the name? And I was like, what do you mean? And then someone else said it, and someone else said it. And I'm like, the only thing that makes sense is to go from Honey, We're Home to Honey, I'm Home, which ironically was the original name of the show. So that's fine. Like we could totally do that. Or we could keep it the same. And that is just more of a like, I don't care. Like I'm going to have to do a new cover shoot, obviously, and stuff like that, like album artwork or whatever you want to call that for like a podcast, and a new trailer. So changing the We're to I'm is the literal least of my problems today. So it's really personal preference. Like I will put up a vote if it should be Honey, We're Home or Honey, I'm Home. The only other thing, like John and I were talking about this, is that the only other thing you could change it to is like the Caro Show, which I just feel like sounds weird. But coming up with another like kitschy name like doesn't even make any sense. So that's sort of where I am in that. And I for once in my life have literally zero opinion on it. So feel free to let me know. I wanted to kind of catch up, like State of the Union, about what's been going on with me. So this is a bit more of like a serious thing. like I have more fun things too, and I asked you guys a bunch of questions about what you want to hear about, and we'll get to that as well. But for the sake of this being the first solo episode, I felt like it would be a nice time to get back to transparency on life, state of relationships, and all of that. If I am being honest, let me see. Okay, like it was during Everything But the Dress. In March, it was right before. When we were setting up for Everything But the Dress, it was one of the days that we were doing the gorilla poster flyers out like in the village. And we went to get a drink at Fairfax, and it was me and Jenna and our friend. And we were talking about the show, and she was like, I love it. I feel like there's just like, I can tell that there are pauses when topics come up that there's something that you aren't saying. And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, that is true. But the problem is that it's not my stuff to share. So even though I'm like living in a world or reality where like I'm totally consumed by stuff that's going on that is related to like parents and the potential of like grandparents and living far away from them, and what if they start to get sick. And once we were talking about parents not taking care of themselves, and even siblings and those relationships and in-laws, there has been a really big part of me. I wrote down, like when I was prepping this episode, I wrote down like 6 months for the last 6 months. And then I realized, honestly, longer, that I have not really been able to be transparent about. And so instead, I will either like try to share an opinion without context, or just sort of try to like say what I can and then eat it and then not like go into the rest of it, even though that's the point of the show, is that not most of us, and hopefully not most of us, but some of us are in the same boat right now with a lot of stuff that's going on. And anywhere you look, you can probably find a friend your age or in your phase of life who has some similar path, like some crossing path with you right now. And that's like the whole point of the show. And so it's been kind of getting me down that where my paths are crossing with like other like honeys, I actually can't even really be honest or open about. And so I feel like I haven't been able to be the ethos of the show, which is transparent. And now that we and my family like sort of have answers, and I've gotten more comfortable, and with this transition of like going into this solo stuff, I just feel like I just sort of had to have like a conversation with myself that's like, I'm either going to be honest or I'm like not going to do it. And I'm going to have to figure out a way to be honest in a way that doesn't jeopardize other people's stories if I do feel like it's theirs to share. And so that's what I'm going to kind of try to do today. I don't necessarily know where to start. I think I'm going to start by saying that my mom has been sick for a while, and during the filming of this show, we've been filming for 2 Christmases. So I believe right before we started filming, my mom had a back surgery, like a huge lower back surgery. And to be honest with you, like I at this point, I can't even remember which problem that was for. The next Christmas, she had a brain surgery, and that was for a tumor in her pineal gland. Then the following May, she like got COVID again. She's had COVID so many times. And then in July, there was like a traumatic event emotionally, like with our family. And between May and this May, June, and July, her speech started to get slurred. But like, keep in mind that she was still healing from this brain surgery. So I think that it was a little confusing for all of us. And a brain surgery and your speech are, it has to be linked, especially when you're talking inflammation and stress. So we were sort of trying to poke around and see what would be going on. And her neurologist was saying, like, her neurosurgeon was saying she was fine, but she didn't feel fine. And then as September came, people were increasingly worried at that point, and the doctor's visits had like really escalated. And so what I'm going to say for me personally is that starting in August last year, a lot of my time has started to be taken up by wondering if my mom is okay and what's going on with her, and keeping track of tests and doctor's appointments, and learning a lot about a lot of stuff medically, and spending a lot of time praying for her, and leaning really on John and my family. And one thing that has done is like isolated me from my friendships a little bit, self-inflicted. And I have the best friends that I feel like I don't know how that this happened, that I have the best friends in the world. Like a lot of things recently make me feel like I could barf. But that makes me feel like I could vom. It's just like, like sometimes I just feel like I don't deserve them, but they have so much patience and grace with me. I know for a fact that since like last August, September, I have basically been nowhere to be found by my friends. And it's been hard. And I've spent all of my free time on the phone with my mom and my sisters. And it's felt like really important to me to make sure that was like the number one priority as people's anxiety and fear increased around the whole health subject. At the same time, I like don't know, like you guys are going through this with me in real time, because it literally, I was like, I feel like I still can't talk about this. There's something going on with one of my sisters, and I don't even know the right way to talk about it, because there is no right way to talk about it, and the whole thing is really confusing for me. But like, I'm like, you know what? This is my life, and I'm gonna share it. Like I signed up to share it, and I'm going to share. But one of my sisters really has not been speaking to us, and I have been really struggling with that. I have spent the same amount of time that I'm telling you about the illness stuff, begging her to see us, to speak to us. I have spent time, I'm going to like hurt feelings. I think I really, as of like finding out that my mom has ALS, I'm like, I just like don't have room to hate anybody. I don't have room to care too much about anyone else's actions. If it's affecting my mom, I definitely still care, but I also think I've lost the desire to like protect certain people that like I don't feel need protection from their own actions. I've spent a lot of time trying to talk to people that I felt could help me get in contact with my sister or have conversation with her that might lead to resolution, while fully knowing that she doesn't want resolution, but then being told that she does. So I'm confused. I've spent so much energy talking to my dad, like my biological dad. I've had to do things that are very difficult. Before she sort of pulled away, I spent quite a long time in therapy with her. It made me, there's not even totally so much that I can share, but it made me so depressed. I had to stop. For whatever reason, cannot seem to stop trying though, getting her to like come back and talk to us and be with us despite what has gone on. And I also know that I am not being metaphorical killing my mom. And so this even is like a plea for her to be a team player, or to come back to us and hang out with us and see us and speak to us. But between these things, like I have been like an emotional hermit, as a defense for not being an emotional wreck, like truly since last August. And what I didn't see coming was that like so many of these things would feed directly into so many of the things that we talk about on the show. And I've really battled because one thing that I do feel kind of proud of myself for is like understanding what not to say about other people because they didn't sign up for this. Like, I know what John doesn't want shared. I try really hard to like, and I understand the cost of this is not being interesting. Like, do not get me wrong. Like, the cost of not exploiting like every petty thought or putting other people's business online is, in terms of the internet, not being interesting. So like, it's not being involved in any drama online or being spread for this or that. Like, I understand that. And being interesting for me is not worth blowing up like other people's lives or stories that aren't yours to share, even if you're going through what's happening at the same time and it's affecting you. And that has been really difficult for me to say. Like, I relate to a lot of these emails and stories and voicemails and questions, and I don't feel allowed to say it. I now feel like I have put so much energy and effort into resolution for this, and I have had so much heartache with it. And I also feel now that my mom is more comfortable with us talking about her diagnosis. Like, that was number one for me. I was never going to talk about her brain surgery. I was never going to talk about these things that she was going through unless she was comfortable with it. Like, God forbid, like, like my aunt, like my great aunt listens to this and finds out from me that my mom is sick and not my mom. Like, that's just so inappropriate. Also, God forbid, I talk about something that's going on with my sister and she listens and feels like, this is the first she's heard of it, which wouldn't be the case, but like, you get what I'm saying. Anyways, it's caused for like a really frustrating limbo for me when we're recording these episodes. And that's just a part of being online that I'm not going to sacrifice actual familial relationships to be online. And the reason that I'm doing it now is just because I think that everything has really come to a head and come to light, and I've let everything play out in a way that it feels appropriate now to share, and that's like, okay, you know what I mean? But I'm definitely struggling with how to move forward. If you guys have advice with my sister, and encouraging her to want resolution. I would say that normally that stuff happens when the person is ready for it. And I would also say that what's frustrating is that we can't wait until she's ready for it. Like, time is of the essence at the moment. And it's not worth watching my mom like struggle and be in pain. So if any of you have successfully reconciled with a sibling, I would love to know how and what, without going into like further detail and like exploiting her life for other things. And then that moves us to March, which the day I finished everything but the dress, my parents gave me the news that my mom was diagnosed with bulbar onset ALS. And that since then, everything has just been really insane. Like, I have been with her more days than I have not been with her, and we're trying to figure everything out. So I have just had the best month that anybody has ever had. So whatever I said about 2025 being a good year, like, I think that I need to throw that rock back in the pond. That is fine. Maybe it'll look up. Like, the only thing I want is for my mom to get a reversal for her ALS. So like, if that happened, who could complain about anything, But it's been a go. I literally, like I said, I live in a state of vomit. But I have just sort of been in this phase where I'm like, so what am I going to do? And these are like very real questions. Like, the first thing that came to my mind, literally, when my parents told me, I was like, I'm going to have a baby sooner. And I told John, and John's just like freaked out. And he's like, okay, like whatever you need. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not ready to get pregnant. Like, transparently, this is a conversation that we had about having later. Like, you guys know that we're very anal people. We were like, we'll talk about talking about this like in September. And now it's sort of like existential, and understanding the care that's needed for my mom, but also just sort of like her parents passed away when she was my age, and her largest, sadness in life is that her mom didn't get to see how it ended up for her, which was like leaving a marriage that she really needed to leave, and like having Sarah and Claire and making more for herself. And not only do I not want that, but I know that she really doesn't want that. And I know that she's been waiting to become a grandparent for some time. And she never pushes me in a way that's not, comical. But it was truly the first thought that was like, do I just like get pregnant now? And then that leads to the conversation that's like, okay, well then what type of pregnancy is that? And how stressful is that going to be? And are you going to be able to travel back and forth like that? And, aside from logistically, like you're in the middle of a lease, like you can't move. You're probably not going to move in November. Like none of it really makes sense. And I'm not saying that it ever needs to, but like, would it affect my ability to be there for her and care for her and step up for her? And would it really be a good thing, or is it just an impulsive decision? Then it's the question of like, do I need to move home? And then it's frustrating because like I love my life here, and I love my apartment here, and I love the family that I have here. More than that, like I have a husband who's in the office 5 days a week. But like moving home it's not simple. It's me moving away from John. And then you get into the conversation of how does that affect a relationship or a marriage, and something that's supposed to be like your number one support system. And John and I have talked about this many times, and he's like, we're going to do whatever you need to do. So we will make it work if you have to go home. But he can't come with me. And I don't know if we're even there yet, and hopefully we won't be for a long time. And my mom's breathing is at 110%. So if you don't know, like the thing that kills you with ALS is you stop being able to breathe. So you essentially suffocate. Very sad. But her breathing is at 110%, which means she's not going anywhere anytime soon, which is really nice. I mean, that's a light in a very dark sky for us. But as the oldest, the only one that's not in school, I feel like if someone had to do it, it would be me. And then we overlook the fact that I can't get pregnant and start a family if I have to move away from my husband. So nothing really makes sense right now. All I know is that she has her feeding tube. We are trying to get her better in time to go see my sister graduate in Paris, where she goes to school, as you guys know. Sarah, the one that came on. And spend her time like enjoying life, and really switch the focus back to like what we can do to help her, and like do the research and understand how to show up for her and be there for her in a very like real but extremely positive way. So I keep saying like I just don't want to put the cart before the horse. And I know in a way that some of that is, but I also don't want to make an irresponsible or irrational, decision. Spontaneity in this time I don't think is necessarily like crazy helpful. And I would appreciate any advice on this. I really hope that there's no one out there that has been through this. I do, unfortunately, however, know some of you have, because I've talked to some of you already about it. But if you have any insight on what you felt was helpful or the right choice for you, or how you came about that, or how you're managing leaning on other people, I would appreciate that, especially even with siblings, like I said. And just know that I really rely on this show for comfort and getting through times and having people to lean on. And look at for inspiration and a way to move forward as I do these things for like the first time in every respect. You know, if I had a baby in my apartment, I don't know if like in my mind, I'm like, oh, my little office can be a nursery, but I have 5 flights of stairs. Like that doesn't work. But then maybe someone's like, it does work. And this is how you make it work. I don't know what I don't know. And I think that when you're married, even if you have a very healthy relationship with open doors of communication, like it is the blind leading the blind. Like each day, John and I's 4-year wedding anniversary is on Thursday. And in true form, we will be flying that morning to Ohio to see both of his brothers graduate, because we always have something to do on our anniversary. And that'll be the first time that either of us will have been married for 4 years. It's every day is the first time for us for whatever it is that we're going through. And, you know, sometimes other people have already had that experience. And so it's extremely helpful to have that community because you just don't know what you don't know. And I think that that's where I am right now in life, where I'm like having to take certain risks and certain leaps and figure stuff out that I don't know how to figure out, but I'm going to have to figure out how to figure it out and adjust and pivot and grieve and be hopeful and have faith and learn how to be transparent when I feel like shutting down and learn how to be open without exploiting other people's business and all of the rest. And these are all things that I don't know how to do, but I think it's a really good challenge to have to learn it. And I think that it can only help me grow as a person. So I really appreciate you for giving me the space. This was our first solo episode. There's been stuff I've wanted to get off my chest, and I'm sure that there's like a lot more, but it's cathartic and helpful, and I think it's going to help us move forward, you know, being able to be honest about what's actually going on and put it out there. So I thank you guys. I love you very much. Thank you for continuing to show up. And I'm excited about everything that is to come. And please I know I asked you a million questions. That's how I work. I'm really sorry. But if you have answers to any of them, I would love to know. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.